I still remember the night my life changed forever. The night my dreams were sold for the price of my father's debts. I was only 18, young, naive, full of wild hopes about the world. I wanted to go to university, study architecture, and maybe build a life I could call my own. But that night, everything I thought I wanted came crashing down. It started with raised voices downstairs. My father's voice, trembling, desperate, and another man's voice, calm and deep, the kind of voice that could silence a room. I remember tiptoeing down the hallway, holding my breath as the old wooden floor creaked beneath my bare feet. "Please, Mr. Desmond, give me more time," my father begged. "Just 3 months." The man interrupted, his tone steady but cold. "3 months won't change the numbers, Mr. Olayemi. You've had 2 years. You signed the contract." I froze. That name, Desmond, I had heard it before. A wealthy businessman, the man who practically owned half the town. People called him the Iron Man, rumor had it. He'd built his empire from nothing, but it had cost him everything, including his heart. I peeked around the corner. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in an expensive dark suit. His face was unreadable, the face of a man who had seen too much and trusted too little. He was at least twice my age, maybe 40 or so, but there was something intimidatingly calm about him. And then my father said the words that shattered my world. "What if I offered you something else instead?" Mr. Desmond raised a brow. "Something else?" "My daughter," my father whispered, voice cracking. "Amora. She's young, respectful, and she'll make a good wife." My heart stopped. I stepped back, my mouth open, but no sound came out. A wife? At 18? To pay off his debt? I wanted to scream, to run, but my feet wouldn't move. I stood frozen in that hallway as silence filled the room. And then, the man's deep voice echoed softly. "Bring her here." My father called out my name, his tone shaky but firm, and I walked in, trembling. The man's gaze met mine, sharp, assessing, yet strangely, not cruel. For a moment, it felt like he was searching my face for something. "She's just a child," he said finally, standing up. But my father fell to his knees. "Please, she's all I have left. Don't take my home. Don't ruin us." The man turned away, walking toward the door. And then, he stopped. He looked back at me, eyes deep and unreadable, and said, "1 year. After that, if she wishes to leave, she's free. But until then, she's my wife." That was the night my childhood ended. And the night my story began. The wedding happened 3 days later. There was no music, no dancing, no bridesmaids, just a few witnesses, my tear-streaked face, and a man who looked like he hadn't smiled in years. I remember staring at the ring on my finger as the priest declared us husband and wife. It felt heavy, cold, like a chain disguised as gold. My father stood at the back, head bowed, guilt written all over his face. After the ceremony, Mr. Desmond, my husband, turned to me quietly. "You'll be safe with me," he said simply. "You won't lack anything." He didn't touch me, didn't smile, didn't even look long. He just turned and walked away, leaving me to follow him into a new life I never asked for. When we arrived at his mansion, it was like stepping into another world. Marble floors, golden lights, tall staircases. Everything screamed wealth, yet the air felt cold. The staff bowed when we entered, but their eyes said it all, pity. I was led to a large bedroom, too big for one person, too silent for comfort. Mr. Desmond stood by the door and said, "You'll stay here. If you need anything, speak to Mrs. Grace, the housekeeper. Dinner is at 8. He was about to leave when I finally gathered the courage to ask, "Why me?" He paused, his hand on the door frame, his back to me. "Because your father offered you," he said softly. "And because I saw something in your eyes that night, something I used to have, before the world took it." Then he left. I sat on the bed and cried until my pillow was soaked. I hated him. I hated my father. I hated life. I wanted to run away, but where would I go? For weeks, I barely saw him. He left early, came home late, and never spoke more than a few words. But every time he walked past me, I felt something strange, not fear, but a quiet curiosity. Who was this man, really? Why did he accept such an arrangement? Then one night, something happened that changed everything. I was walking down the hallway when I heard raised voices coming from his study. "Sir, she's too young," a man's voice said. "The board won't approve. It'll ruin your reputation." "Let them talk," Desmond replied, calm but firm. "I made a promise." That word again, promise. I leaned closer to the door, my heart racing. And then I heard him say something that froze me in place. "She deserves better than the life she was given. I'll make sure she gets it, even if she hates me for it." I stepped back quietly, tears filling my eyes. For the first time, I saw him not as the monster I thought he was, but as a man carrying something heavy, something he wouldn't say out loud. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying his words in my mind. And that was the beginning of something I never expected, the beginning of love in the most unexpected place. The days turned into weeks, and the mansion that once felt like a golden cage slowly became a world of questions I couldn't escape. Mr. Desmond, or Desmond, as I eventually began to think of him, was a mystery wrapped in calmness. He never raised his voice, never showed anger, and yet, the entire household seemed to walk on eggshells around him. He was always polite, always distant, and always alone. Every morning, he'd have his black coffee and read the newspaper in silence. He'd nod when I entered the room, his gaze polite but unreadable. And then, just as the sunlight began to fill the dining room, he'd quietly put on his suit jacket and say, "If you need anything, Grace will assist you," before heading out for the day. I wanted to hate him for the situation I was in. But the more I watched him, the more I realized, hate wasn't what I felt anymore. It was something else. Something confusing. One afternoon, Mrs. Grace, the elderly housekeeper who treated me more kindly than anyone, found me sitting in the garden, staring at the fountain. "You shouldn't be out here in the cold, dear," she said, setting down a cup of tea beside me. I forced a smile. "It's quiet here. I like the sound of the water." She nodded. "That's why he built it," said the sound helped him think. "Mr. Desmond." "Yes. He spends hours here when no one's around. This house wasn't always this quiet, you know." Her tone softened. "There was laughter here once, before the accident." I looked up sharply. "Accident?" Mrs. Grace hesitated, glancing around as if deciding whether to tell me. "It's not my place to say too much, but his wife and little daughter died in a car crash 8 years ago. He was the one driving." The cup nearly slipped from my hand. "What?" "He blamed himself," she continued softly. "That's when he changed. Stopped smiling. Stopped living, really. You're the first person who's brought light into this house in years, Amora. Maybe you're what he needs to heal." I didn't know what to say. For the first time, I saw him not as a cold man who bought me like property, but as someone broken by loss. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept picturing him sitting alone at his desk, haunted by memories he couldn't erase. I wanted to talk to him, to ask him if it was true, but what right did I have? I was just the girl who'd been forced into his life. But fate has a way of answering questions you don't even dare to ask. A few nights later, I woke up to the sound of thunder. The storm was loud, shaking the windows. I got up to close the curtains, and that's when I saw him outside, standing in the rain, staring at the fountain. Without thinking, I ran downstairs, grabbed a shawl, and went out into the storm. "Desmond!" I called out, my voice barely audible over the wind. He didn't turn around. When I reached him, I saw the pain in his eyes, raw, unguarded. He looked like a man fighting memories he couldn't outrun. "Come inside," I pleaded. "You'll get sick." He finally looked at me. Rain dripped from his hair, his shirt soaked through, but his eyes, they were different. Softer. Vulnerable. "Do you hear it?" he asked quietly. I frowned. "Hear what?" "The water," he whispered. It was her favorite sound. She used to sit here with our daughter and listen to the fountain every evening. I promised I'd protect them, and I failed. The words broke something inside me. I stepped closer, my heart aching for him. "It wasn't your fault," I said gently. "You can't carry that forever." He looked down at me, searching my face as if trying to decide whether to believe me. And for the first time since our wedding, he said my name. Amora. Just hearing it in his voice, deep, calm, and almost fragile, made my chest tighten. "You shouldn't be out here," he said softly. "You'll catch a cold." "And you shouldn't be either," I replied with a faint smile. He almost smiled back. Almost. Then he reached for my hand, hesitated, and finally led me back inside. That night, he made me tea himself. He sat across from me in the quiet kitchen, and for the first time, we talked. Not as strangers. Not as a girl forced into marriage. But as two people, both trapped by circumstances neither chose. He told me about his daughter, little Maya, who had loved to draw flowers on the garden walls. He said his wife, Clara, was gentle but strong, a teacher who believed kindness could change the world. As he spoke, I realized the truth. He wasn't cruel. He was just broken. And for reasons I couldn't explain, I wanted to fix him. From that night on, everything changed between us. He started having breakfast with me, asking about my day, letting me decorate parts of the house. The mansion began to feel alive again, softer, warmer. Even the staff started smiling more. But as peace quietly settled in, I couldn't shake one lingering thought. If love could grow from something forced, what would happen if the world found out? Because in a town like ours, secrets never stayed buried for long. And soon, Desmond's past, and my father's betrayal, would come crashing into our fragile happiness like a storm we couldn't escape. For a while, it felt like life had finally begun to breathe again. The walls of the mansion no longer echoed with silence. The garden bloomed with color. And Desmond began to change in ways I never imagined possible. He started leaving notes on the breakfast tray. Simple things, "Don't forget to eat," or "The lilies by the window are your doing, aren't they?" Sometimes I'd catch him watching me with that quiet, thoughtful gaze that made my heart flutter and my stomach twist in confusion. I wasn't sure what it was, friendship, gratitude, or the beginnings of something deeper, but it felt real. It felt like healing. Until the day my past came knocking. It was a sunny afternoon. I was in the living room, arranging flowers, when Mrs. Grace came rushing in. "Madam Amora," she whispered nervously, "someone's at the gate asking to see you." I frowned. "Who?" She hesitated. "He said he's your father." My heart dropped. I hadn't seen him since the wedding. Not once. Not a call, not a letter. For months, I had carried the pain of his betrayal in silence, trying to forgive him, but the wound never really healed. I walked out to the front courtyard, and there he was, my father. He looked older, weaker, his once proud posture now slumped with shame. Amora, he said softly, his voice trembling. My daughter. I folded my arms, my heart pounding. You have no right to call me that. He winced. I deserve that. I do. But please, let me explain. Explain what? How you sold me like property. My voice cracked. How you traded my future for your debts. He lowered his head, tears filling his eyes. I did it to save us. I didn't have a choice. I laughed bitterly. You always had a choice, Daddy. You just didn't choose me. He reached out, but I stepped back. Please, Amora. I came to warn you. That made me pause. Warn me? About what? He looked around nervously, as if someone might hear. Desmond isn't who you think he is. My stomach tightened. What are you talking about? He hesitated. He was the reason I lost everything. The debt wasn't from gambling or bad business like he told you. It was him. He set me up. Took my company, my home, and then took you. I stared at him in disbelief. You're lying. I swear it's the truth, he said, desperation spilling from every word. He destroyed me. This marriage was never mercy, it was revenge. The world tilted. Revenge? I couldn't breathe. My hands went cold as pieces of the past started to twist inside my mind. Desmond's calmness. His silence. The way he had agreed to the marriage so quickly. Could it be true? Before I could say anything, Desmond's voice came from behind me. Amora, he said quietly. Go inside. I turned around, my heart racing. He was standing at the doorway, his face unreadable. My father glared at him. You think you can hide the truth forever, Desmond? She'll find out who you really are. Desmond's jaw tightened. That's enough. But my father wasn't done. You ruined me, and now you've trapped her in your twisted guilt. You think playing savior will make you a good man again. Stop it. I screamed, tears streaming down my face. Both of you. Silence fell. Desmond's eyes softened when he looked at me, but there was something else there too, regret. Deep, haunting regret. Is it true? I whispered, my voice breaking. Tell me, Desmond. Did you destroy my father? He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me with that same pained expression, the kind that said yes without saying the word. I felt my heart shatter. I turned and ran inside before he could stop me. That night, I locked myself in my room. My world spun between love and betrayal, truth and lies. I couldn't sleep. Every word my father said echoed in my head. He set me up. He took you as revenge. It didn't make sense, not with the man I'd come to know. The man who made tea for me when I was cold, who built a garden to honor his late wife and daughter, who smiled, truly smiled, for the first time in years when I laughed. Could that man really be so cruel? But the next morning, I found something that broke me even more. I was in his study, the one room he'd told me never to enter. But anger has a way of silencing caution. I opened the door and stepped inside. The room smelled of old books and memories. Papers were scattered across the desk, and among them, I saw a folder with my father's name on it. I picked it up, my hands trembling. Inside were documents, contracts, legal transfers, all signed by my father, and countersigned by Desmond. The dates matched everything he had told me. It was true. Desmond had taken over my father's business. Every asset. Every share. He had ruined him. And then, I saw something else. A letter, dated 2 months before the wedding, written in Desmond's handwriting. I will take what he loves most, not for revenge, but to protect her from him. She deserves a better life than what her father can give, even if she hates me for it. My knees went weak. He hadn't done it for greed. He had done it for me. But how could I face him now? I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, and there he was, standing at the door. I told you not to come in here, he said softly. I had to know, I whispered. Why didn't you tell me? He sighed, running a hand over his face. Because I knew you'd never look at me the same again. Tears filled my eyes. You destroyed my father's life. He was destroying yours, Amora, Desmond said, his voice shaking. He was gambling everything away. The money you were saving for school, your late mother's property, everything. I didn't take it for revenge. I took it so you'd have a future. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But the truth was too tangled, too painful. So you bought me instead. I whispered. He stepped closer, his eyes filled with sorrow. No. I married you to keep you safe. From him. From the people he owed. From the world that would have eaten you alive. But yes, I should have told you the truth. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the soft hum of the rain outside. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said finally. I don't expect you to, he murmured. Just know that everything I've done, right or wrong, was because I cared for you more than I should have. He turned to leave, but before he stepped out, he added quietly, the one-year promise still stands. If you want to leave after that, I won't stop you. And then he was gone. That night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I realized something terrifying and beautiful at once. I didn't want to leave. Even after the lies, the pain, and the truth, my heart still ached for him. Love is strange that way. It blooms in the most broken places, whether we want it to or not. But I had no idea that the next test of that love was already on its way, one that would either destroy us completely or bind us together forever. After that night in the study, Desmond and I became strangers again, two people walking the same hallways but on opposite sides of silence. He no longer waited for me at breakfast. No more soft smiles across the dining table. No more gentle questions about my day. It was as though a wall had risen between us, cold, invisible, and unbreakable. I thought I'd feel relieved having distance from him, but instead, it hurt. Because now, every silence between us was filled with the ghost of what could have been. Sometimes, I'd find him sitting alone in the garden, staring at the fountain again, lost in thought. And though I wanted to reach out, to tell him that I understood, that maybe I even forgave him, pride held my tongue. Days turned into weeks, until one evening, everything changed. It was just after sunset when I came home from town. I had gone to the market with Mrs. Grace to buy some spices. We laughed a bit, trying to bring some normalcy back into our lives. But as we approached the mansion gate, something felt wrong. The air was too still. The guards who usually stood at the entrance were nowhere to be found. "Stay behind me," Mrs. Grace whispered. The gate was slightly open. I pushed it, and it creaked softly. The courtyard lights were on, but there were no sounds, no voices, no footsteps, nothing. Then I saw it, the front door, wide open. My stomach twisted. "Desmond." I called out. "Desmond." No answer. I rushed inside, and that's when I heard the shattering sound of glass from the hallway. Then a gunshot. Everything stopped. Mrs. Grace screamed, "Amora, get down," and dragged me behind one of the pillars, but I broke free. "Desmond." I screamed again, my heart pounding as I ran down the corridor. I turned the corner, and froze. There were 3 men in black standing in the living room, faces covered, weapons in their hands. And on the floor, near the staircase, Desmond was on his knees, bleeding from his shoulder, still trying to shield something behind him, a small safe. "Where's the drive?" one of the men barked. "We know you have it." Desmond's voice was steady, even through the pain. "You won't get anything from me." The man raised his gun. And without thinking, I screamed, "Stop." All 3 turned toward me. Desmond's eyes widened. "Amora, no." Before I could move, one of the men grabbed me by the arm, yanking me forward. "Well, look what we have here," he sneered. "The pretty little wife." Desmond's expression darkened, his jaw tightening. "Don't touch her." The man laughed. "Or what? You'll bleed on us." In a flash, Desmond lunged forward, knocking the gun out of the man's hand. The room erupted into chaos, shouting, gunfire, glass breaking. I ducked behind the couch, shaking, watching the man I once thought was cold fight like a man who had everything to lose. He moved with precision, fierce, desperate. But he was outnumbered. One of the men hit him from behind, and Desmond fell hard, his breath ragged. I couldn't just stand there. I grabbed the first thing I saw, a metal vase, and swung it at the man closest to me. It hit his arm, and he cursed, turning toward me, his gun raised. Everything froze in that instant. I heard the gunshot, but I didn't feel anything. Because Desmond had stepped in front of me. The bullet hit him in the side. He staggered, then collapsed into my arms. "No, no, no, no," I cried, holding him, my hands covered in his blood. The men hesitated for a moment, then ran when they heard police sirens approaching from the distance. I barely noticed them leave. All I could see was Desmond's face, pale, pained, yet still trying to smile. Why did you do that?" I sobbed. His hand trembled as he reached up and touched my cheek. "Because I already lost one family. I wasn't going to lose another." Tears poured down my face as I pressed my hand to his wound. "Stay with me, please. Don't close your eyes." He gave a faint smile. You were the only thing that made me believe I could still feel something. Don't ever let that light die, Amora." The sound of sirens grew louder. The police rushed in. Everything became a blur of flashing lights and chaos. They took Desmond away in an ambulance. I followed, clutching his blood-stained shirt in my hands like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. The next few days were a haze of hospital corridors, sleepless nights, and prayers whispered into the dark. He survived, but barely. The bullet had grazed his lung. The doctors said if he hadn't gotten to the hospital when he did, he wouldn't have made it. When he finally woke up, I was sitting by his bedside, my eyes swollen from crying. He looked at me weakly and said, "You didn't leave." I smiled through my tears. "Did you really think I would?" He chuckled softly, then winced from the pain. "After everything I did, I thought you'd hate me forever." I shook my head. "I did. For a while. But then I realized something. You didn't just save me that night. You've been saving me since the day we met." He looked at me, his eyes glistening. "I don't deserve you." I leaned closer, taking his hand in mine. "Maybe not. But love isn't about deserving, Desmond. It's about forgiving. It's about choosing." He squeezed my hand weakly. "And you choose me?" I smiled. "Every day." Weeks later, when he finally came home from the hospital, everything was different. We rebuilt together, not just the house, but ourselves. My father eventually came to apologize, truly this time, and I forgave him. It wasn't easy, but I understood now. Forgiveness wasn't for the person who hurt you, it was for your own peace. Desmond and I renewed our vows quietly in the garden beside the fountain, the same place where our story began in pain and ended in love. As he slipped the ring back on my finger, he whispered, "You were supposed to be my redemption, Amora. But you became my reason to live." And I looked into his eyes and said, "You were supposed to be my prison, but you became my home." It's been 5 years now since that day. The mansion is full of laughter again. We adopted a little girl, her name is Maya, after his daughter, and every evening, we sit by the fountain, listening to the sound of the water. Sometimes, I think back to that terrified 18-year-old girl who thought her life was over when she was forced to marry a 40-year-old man. If only she knew then what I know now, that love doesn't always come the way you expect it. Sometimes it comes through pain, forgiveness, and second chances. Because love was never the enemy. Fear was. And I finally stopped being afraid. If someone had told me years ago that the man I once feared would become the one person I trusted most in this world, I would have laughed, or cried, or both. Back then, I believed love was supposed to be easy. Pretty. Young. Perfect. But life doesn't give us love in neat packages. Sometimes, it hands it to us wrapped in pain, disguised as loss, duty, or even mistake, just to see if we're strong enough to recognize it when it finally reveals itself. I used to think being forced into marriage was the worst thing that could happen to me. But what I didn't realize was that fate had a strange way of giving me what I needed, not what I wanted. Desmond was not the monster I thought he was. He was a man who had been broken by guilt, betrayed by blood, and left with nothing but his work to fill the silence. And I was a girl who didn't yet know her own strength, who confused fear with hatred and silence with weakness. Together, we were two lost souls, bound by circumstance, yet searching for redemption in each other's eyes. And somewhere between the pain, the arguments, and the long nights of quiet understanding, we healed. Not perfectly, not all at once, but piece by piece. I learned that love isn't about age, wealth, or grand gestures. It's about choosing someone, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. It's about standing beside them when the world falls apart, and knowing that even in the chaos, their heartbeat is home. Desmond once said that forgiveness is not a gift for the other person, it's freedom for yourself. And now I understand. Because the moment I forgave him, truly forgave him, was the moment I set myself free. Free from anger. Free from fear. Free from the girl who thought she was a victim of fate. I became a woman who owned her story, scars, tears, and all. And today, when I look at our daughter laughing in the garden, when I see Desmond sitting beside me with that quiet peace in his eyes, I realize something profound. Love didn't save me. It transformed me. It taught me that the heart is resilient, that even the deepest wounds can bloom into something beautiful when tended with patience and grace. It taught me that people can change, that redemption is real, that we are not defined by where we began, but by what we choose to become after everything tries to break us. And if you're listening to me now, if you've ever been broken, betrayed, or forced into something you didn't ask for, I want you to know this. You are stronger than your pain. You are allowed to start over. And one day, love, real, patient, healing love, will find you. It may not look like a fairy tale, but it will feel like peace. Because love, true love, doesn't always come to rescue you. Sometimes, it comes to rebuild you. And that's what Desmond and I became for each other. Not perfection. Not fantasy. Just two imperfect souls who decided to build something real from the ruins. And maybe, that's what love was always meant to be.